So did you guys watch the Biden video that I sent in the group?
Yes,
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I didn't really understand I didn't know the context. What was behind it?
So, well, did you see what he said?
Well, he said Negro, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he said it, what, 2 or 3 times, didn't he? I
2 or
think?
3 times, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Even you saying that now, I'm thinking to myself, are we able to say that? Is that going to be flagged by YouTube?
Well, Biden
Well,
said it, didn't he?
Biden said it on the
didn't get
world
flagged, did
stage and didn't get flagged by anyone. So
Yeah.
they're going to pick on no offence, but they're going to pick on like, you know, a nobody from Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I imagine if this podcast had maybe like, you know, a lot more publicity than it has now, I reckon in the comment section, you'd get slated for that.
Yeah, and he would, and I'll
Well,
tell you
I'm
why.
only repeating what Biden
No, I
said.
know. I know that.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that.
And we'll
just,
back you till the end.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
No,
that's
100%.
what I'm saying,
I'm just looking at it from a different point of view. But you saying it, people would be like, you can't say that term, etc.
No, but the reason they'd say it about him
repeating it.
is because of the political affiliation that people might assume that we've got from watching our previous episodes. So, you know, we talk a lot of time about conservative views. We've obviously said that we, you know...
So Rikhi can't say it in a way... Yeah,
So if they say, right, you know, you're pro-Trump, you've got conservative
there's
views...
racist intent, of
you
course.
guys have got racist intent. However, if we were liberals and we were, you know, all for Biden and we were all for progressiveness and wokeism...
Yeah. I don't think you should categorise the two because I'd say that I'm quite liberal.
No, and this is what I was just going to add.
Like,
you know,
I was all for Corbyn over, you know, and that's obviously he was very socialist, whatever.
Yeah.
And yet I like Trump as well. So it's like,
and this
I
is
don't
the
really
thing,
know what
like
category I fall into,
we're not like a right, we're not a right wing or an alt right podcast.
not at all. I
We
wouldn't
don't
say I
know.
was at all.
We just
We
we're just a
fluctuate.
lot. Exactly. We were just speaking about this about your dad because you know your dad's quite an educated guy and he talks. He gives you feedback on the
he does,
podcast,
he
which
does.
we appreciate, sir. But you know, we were saying like he seems like the type of guy where he just
doesn't
lets
just
his
sit in one camp.
he just lets his logic guide him. So he doesn't necessarily, because sometimes you can have confirmation bias where you know you might not necessarily believe in something, but because you believe that is how a right or a left person would think, you align yourself with that worldview.
Yeah, and I feel like logic, a lot of time now, logic can't just guide you. You've got to be in a camp and you have to stay in that camp.
Yeah.
And you have to be ride or die with that camp. You know, there's no kind of, you know, yes, I agree with the liberals on this point of view, but I agree with the right on that point of view.
Yeah.
No, you clearly make it who you're affiliated to.
Exactly.
And then that's it till the end.
And it's like, you know, Hitler liked carrots. If you like carrots, you're like Hitler. Do you know what I mean? That's how like they make the link between you know, Donald Trump drives a Tesla. If you drive a Tesla, you're a Donald Trump lover. Like,
But it's interesting.
Go on.
So I was going to say, you mentioned Trump. It's interesting because going back to obviously you saying the word Negro, if Trump would have said that, you think about how all the US media outlets would have slated him and they'd have taken the opportunity to say he's racist.
Mate,
but
he would have
because
got
Biden,
crucified.
To be honest, I only heard about Biden because Chris is very involved with US politics and he sent it to me. If you hadn't sent it to me, I wouldn't have heard about it.
he's affiliated to Cardi B, so he can say it, surely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who is Biden?
Yeah,
Okay.
like run up with his campaign. He did he did an
Did
interview
an
with
interview
Cardi
with her,
B.
didn't they? Yeah. But could you imagine it? I mean, if that had been Trump, or pretty much anyone who's on the right, I wouldn't have needed to send you that. It would have been everywhere. It would have been trending on Twitter.
Definitely.
It would have been, you know, Trump's
a
News.
racist. Trump,
I mean,
he should be removed from power.
Exactly. Let's impeach him.
Yeah.
And yet Biden is dropping gas like that left, right, and centre.
And you're not even
And
hearing
no
about
one
it.
picks up on it, and it's just the double
Shocking.
standard.
Yeah.
And people are saying, oh, you know, he's not being protected by the media. He's 100% being protected.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Being protected
Yeah,
by the
he
media.
is.
And it just shows how, I mean, anybody now who still trusts the media, right, over the last 2 years, with everything that's gone on, you know, and we can't say too much because we don't want to get banned, but, you know, with COVID, with the election, with the fuel crisis, with everything, if you still trust the media.
But even before all that, when even like the invasion of Afghanistan and everything around Iraq, and it's just for years they've just been manipulating everybody to kind of go and take over the world, like America certainly as well.
Yeah,
but it's very
just
blatant
it's
now,
becoming more and more blatant, and the more blatant they make it, the more people just seem to buy into it. That's and there are quite a few people that can but for the most part, I'd like to think that people are becoming more awakened to it and realising, but I don't know. Most conversations you have with people. Don't get me wrong. There are people that are on the same wavelength, but there's so many people that are just like, oh well, I've done this or you're doing that, and they're just repeating what the media are basically telling them to do. And if you're against what the media is saying, then they're just against you.
Then you're a tinfoil hat wearing.
Yeah. And you're a conspiracy theorist.
You're an Alex Jones. You're
but what I'm noticing is more and more conspiracy theories are becoming real. Like when the whole COVID thing first started, they're talking about vaccine passports, and initially everyone was like, oh, there's no way, it's not about vaccines, blah, blah. Yeah. And now all of a sudden everyone's been made to have a vaccine, and you're going to have to require to have vaccine passports as well.
Yeah.
Nurses losing their jobs because they're not getting vaccinated, putting our healthcare under more crisis. So what do we think about that? 50,000 jobs, I think, has been lost.
Again, we can't speak on our views of the vaccine itself because YouTube won't allow it, but
obviously that's going to put pressure on our health services.
Giving somebody the choice between putting food on the table and getting a chemical put in their body that they don't want put in there, it's wrong. And no one should have to make that choice. No one in this world, in this country anyway, we're meant to be a democratic country, and yet we're forcing people to have a vaccine that they don't necessarily want, or you can make the argument don't necessarily need.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, if you're elderly, if you've got underlying health conditions, if you are in that bracket, then by all means, go for it.
If you want to do it. I mean, our mum's 67.
Yeah.
She would never have the vaccine, would she? And she's never had the flu jab. She's never had the flu jab just because she doesn't feel like she needs it.
But that's her choice.
That's her choice,
and that's what it should be about.
We should respect the fact that people are allowed to have the choice. Isn't this what's this great country? Great Britain is founded on.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know if I could talk about this without kind of YouTube shutting us down, but I was going to talk about how if you've actually had COVID, right, then you've developed naturally the antibodies. Okay, that is a lot more powerful than the vaccine itself.
Of course.
So shouldn't that be taken into account as well?
It should be.
Shouldn't they take into account when it comes to NHS stuff? Okay, who's actually had COVID and been able to fight it off without the vaccine and has naturally developed those antibodies? Okay, you guys are also allowed to continue, but that's not being taken into account. It is simply vaccinated or lose your job.
Well,
lose your job, take the food out your kid's house.
Exactly.
Not allow you to
and
pay bills.
It's almost become, maybe not so much in this country, but in America, it's become like a political statement. So, if you're vaccinated, you are a Biden supporter, you're a liberal, you're on the woke bandwagon, all that sort of stuff. If you're unvaccinated, then it's assumed that you're a Trumpist,
conspiracy
theorist, you're a nutball. You're a terrorist now. They're calling it. Right, you're not putting together.
Well, I had a conversation with the other day, and you're not getting vaccinated. I was like, nah, I'm probably not going to. I don't really want to be honest. Oh, well, I'm doing it for everyone else.
Oh,
and it's just like, if the vaccine is so effective, you get the vaccine, you're safe. And then whoever else doesn't want to take the vaccine, I'll take the risk.
Exactly.
That's basically what I said. And
that is the biggest...
But then it comes to another thing, the vaccine's not 100% effective, and there's all this. So it's like, well, what's the point in taking it then if it's not? And it's not. I don't think... What are the actual effective rates of it? Like...
I don't know. And I think we need to be careful here because we might be drifting towards territory where we might be getting banned. But just going back to the amount of people I've heard, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for you. It's the biggest load of bullshit ever, because these are the type of people who will happily walk past a homeless person and not give them the time of day. These are the type of people who, when the pandemic hit, nearly 2 years ago now. These are the type of people who were stockpiling on the pasta and the toilet paper and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. All of the altruistic things you can do in the world to help the world, right? And then this is the hill that you're willing to die on.
Yeah.
It's a load of bullshit. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it
and also because you've been brainwashed by the media.
You've been brainwashed.
I mean, I don't watch BBC very often or the media, but when I turn it on and I think to myself, what is going on? I listen to podcasts in the car, but sometimes if the radio one's on, I think to myself, what is going on here? Is this actually real radio that I'm listening to now?
And
I don't know whether it's just
me. It's almost like a sketch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like it's just like one big theatrical stage, and we're just like
it's just propaganda.
That's all it is.
It's propaganda, and even to the point where I don't know if you've noticed this, but when they do the adverts telling you to get the vaccine, have you noticed it's a northern accent?
It's usually Welsh.
It's a working
or Welsh a lot of the time as well.
It's a working class accent. You've never got anybody there saying
subliminal.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I identify with this person. I'm a working class person. A working class person is telling me to do it. Right, I'm going to do it. It's so clever what they're doing, or clever's probably the wrong word, but I'd almost say like pernicious.
Subtle tactics.
Yeah. It's sinister almost, and it is propaganda.
It's funny talking about like adverts, right? When it comes to obviously COVID, I saw on Instagram the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but Joe Rogan put a clip. Did you see of the different news outlets in America? And virtually every single advert was sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
Right.
And obviously, if they're sponsored by Pfizer, right, and they've got all this funding coming from Pfizer, then they're going to have to be biased about what they talk about on the news when it comes to COVID and the vaccine.
Yeah.
Of course.
Simply.
Yeah.
Because who's funding you?
Yeah. And my point has always been this, right? If COVID was airborne AIDS, right, and it was that easy to catch and it was that deadly, you would not be needing to give people free McDonald's and free donuts and incentivising people to get a vaccine.
Yeah.
You would have people stampeding to the centres to be done, begging. Yeah. You won't be able to produce enough vaccines for it.
No.
So it says it all. It just says it all. But anybody who's watching and has had the vaccine, we're not. It seems like we're probably.
It's about choice.
Putting you down,
if you want to have the vaccine, go and have the vaccine. But don't then take the moral high ground and say, "Oh, well, I've had the vaccine to protect others and to put yourself in it." If you want to get the vaccine, that's up to you. Other people don't want to get the vaccine, and it comes down to personal choice. And people should be allowed to choose whether they don't want to get the vaccine.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, they're getting to a point now where you can't choose. Well, a lot of people are being made to choose the vaccine because they want to go on holiday or they want to be allowed to get into clubs eventually or to bars.
What a slippery slope, though. Once you allow the government into your life, right?
We spoke about this before, haven't we?
Yeah, and allowing them to decide whether or not you could work. Like I was listening to Radio 1 yesterday at work and they had this young girl on who'd been in care for like 17 years. She doesn't want to get the vaccine, so now suddenly she's going to lose her job. All she knows is care. All of her experience is care. Care's just on her CV. What's she going to do? So once you allow the government to dictate whether you can work or not, what next?
Exactly. And people who turn around and say, well, it's just a vaccine, just have it done. It's not about that. It's about, if we bend on this now, then what's the next thing they're going to try and push on us? If we just roll over now and say, okay, it's just a vaccine, let's get it done. The government wants us to get it done. Then what about when they start asking you to do, the next outlandish thing that they ask you to do? They're going to keep pushing the envelope more and more.
Or we just need to install CCTV in your house.
Exactly.
Just to keep you safe. Yeah, why not?
Exactly.
So have the government actually made it mandatory now to have a vaccine?
Our government hasn't.
For some jobs.
I think they're talking now, anybody in care or something like that.
So anyone in care, it's mandatory.
Staff,
but we're not in care, so we don't have to have the vaccine, do we?
No.
But we are being coerced to get the vaccine because you will take away certain rights in terms of being able to go abroad.
Well, I've got to say, the UK are being quite, I think, out of
Australia's been
the Western world, I think they're being the most freedom-loving. And even more so than America. I mean, there's no restrictions for us to go have a meal or go to the cinema or whatever, okay? But I've got family in Ireland, in-laws in Ireland, and they were telling me the other day that they went to an Indian restaurant in Ireland, right? Obviously, we're going into winter now. It was raining, and they were made to sit outside, obviously under cover, but they were made to sit outside because they've not got a vaccine pass. So in Ireland right now, you can't dine indoors. You can't, go to the cinema or whatever unless you've been vaccinated. Same with the parts of America as well. So we are quite free here.
In Wales, hasn't there? Only this week, I think, in Cardiff because of the vaccine passports. So they're trying to bring it in so that you can't even go to cinemas, but showing that you've been vaccinated, etc. Nightclubs. So in terms of the UK, England, you have the most amount of freedom in England.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to like it feeling like the media is just like almost like just telling a story now that's already been contrived. You know, when it first came out, every single media outlet just agreed it had come from some market in Wuhan, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you've got something that spreads so fast, how are you going to pinpoint the exact, like, think of how big this world is, right? How are you going to be able to pinpoint that's where it originated from some market in some little town in China? Bearing in mind the size of China alone, not to mention the size of England, America, blah, blah, blah. And you can pinpoint it's come from this market in Wuhan. It's like saying, there's a cold originated from Bilston Market.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all?
No.
And we talk about logic, like thinking logically as well. Is that thinking logically if you believe that? If you believe that they can pinpoint the exact location where this just happened to start from and spread, and you've somehow managed to work out it's exactly from, that to me just seems like it was just part of the story. It was just part of the media story, like we'll start it from, and actually there was actually some sort of World Economic Forum, is it? Or what was that meeting that took place?
So the World Economic Council,
Yeah.
and this actually segues nicely into our next point because, my sister-in-law actually sent it to us the other day. Candice Owens, she was at the World Economic Council, I think it is. They do like a forum every year, and they met the other day. And the thing that's so alarming is, in 2019 when they met, right, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they did a simulation of what would happen if a coronavirus broke out across the world and we had a worldwide pandemic. Okay, literally 3 months later, coronavirus hit in Wuhan, and then obviously coincidence, right? So the thing that's so alarming from the other day is that they're now talking about another virus, but this time it's a digital virus that's going to infect the internet, and the only way to sanitize the internet will be to shut down the power grid, right? So they were doing simulations of what would happen if we had 10 days of no power, and this is like sounding alarm bells for some people because they're thinking, does lightning strike twice? They did it in 2019 and then coronavirus happened. Are they now prepping for
the next pan or pandemic, whatever you want to call it?
Plan or pandemic.
But what would the implications of 10 days without power be? I mean, can you imagine?
We've spoken about this briefly, but I before obviously coronavirus, there was a show on Netflix called Doomsday Preppers, and I used to watch it just for a laugh, really, and just to see like the creativity that some of these people have with regards to prepping for Doomsday. You watch it and you think these guys they're a bit crazy, but
look at these lunatics.
Exactly right. Yes, watch too many zombie films and too many Mad Max films. But honestly, Thursday night after I watched that Candice Owens video, I was in bed with my wife and I was turned to her and I said, I think we need to start prepping for if something like this happens. Now, if I'd have said this 2 years ago, she would have said, "Don't be daft, you've been stupid, whatever." But she was like, "Yeah, so do I." And I then said to you guys, guys, look, I'm not joking, but we need to start prepping, thinking I'd probably get some backlash or, don't be daft. And yet, we're all on the same page, because the implications
Would be huge.
It wouldn't just be, no light, no power, no heating. It would be no security systems, no alarm systems, no cameras, no phones to call police,
No floodlights.
no floodlights,
Pitch black.
pitch black. And you know, how safe are you going to be in that instance where everybody's panicking?
It's like lighting a match. It's like setting a fire once. Something sparks.
Yeah.
Everybody starts gathering towards it. All of a sudden, you've got buildings getting smashed, fires getting started,
100%.
and it just spreads. And then you start thinking, well, actually, no one's got any means of calling the police now.
Yeah.
Police are overrun as it is. Roads might be blocked off because people can't see where they're driving.
Yeah, and it's like Lord of the Flies. Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
So what they're going to do? Prosecute everyone.
And there's a lot of desperate people out there that will be looking to
straight up. There's people who are living in desperate situations as it is now.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
You know, I said to you, and you weren't in the room, but you know, it's taken us millions of years to get to this point of civilization that we're at. We're just one big disaster away from going back to the Stone Ages mentally, you know, mentality-wise.
And we've still got that inside us as well. We've still got that primitive instinct. So, like, I feel like people as well would take that opportunity. Yeah. So, you know, let's say 3 days in, there's chaos all around you. But also, you've got a vendetta.
Yeah.
You want to settle. I'm going to go settle it. Do you know why? Because the police aren't around. There's no security cameras. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I know I'm thinking worst case scenario, but you look at all these, like, you know, dystopic films. We spoke about The Purge, for example, right? You can see certain scenes from The Purge happening.
Yeah. Plus, you're going to get food disruptions. So people are going to be looking on the prowl for food as well.
100%.
Yeah. Because no one's, and that's where we were talking about stocking up, maybe getting, you know, 2-3 weeks worth of food supplies stored. And actually, my mate's mom was doing this while COVID was going on. And I kind of agreed with it, but he thought it was a bit mad. I mean, they've got like 2 or 3 freezers full of stuff.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know, she's got, and I actually said to her, like, we got some rice. We ended up using it because we ran out. So it was too long. But yeah, like, I do feel, I think as time goes on, you're almost getting to a point now where nothing would really surprise me anymore.
No.
Like nothing surprised me. So like, if there was some sort of like bug now that they've got to turn their whole power grid off in order to stop this bug from affecting the internet, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, and that's why when I do hear about these conspiracy theories where, oh well, this could happen, I actually think, well, actually, if it could happen, it probably is going to happen at some point, whether it's now or in a few years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, oh, they might turn off the power grid. I remember when I was a teacher and we used to have open days, and I remember I was sat across the desk from where they were doing the recruiting for the IT courses, and they had a big TV above the desk, and on this TV it looked like a computer game. It was a map of the world, right? And there was just these like lines going from different parts of the world, you know, like hundreds a minute.
Yeah.
So I went up to him, I says, what? Is that, you know, is that a game or something? Is that a computer game? What is it? He goes, no, that's in real time, all the cyber attacks that are happening on government servers right now. And I says, like, in real time? And they said, yeah, that's how many are happening. So constantly throughout the day, right, there are people trying to attack, you know, the power grid, the internet grid, the water grid, whatever. It's only going to take one of those attacks to be successful.
Yeah, because you're deflecting them all the time. You know, all it's going to take, like you say, is one to slip through the net.
Slip through the net, exactly.
So when let's say this power shortage does happen, is it a genuine bug or is it some sort of plan? Because I was reading that there could be a switching off the power grids and a resetting of the internet to bring in Web 3.
3.0.
Web 3.0, which is like the new kind of the next, and apparently someone was saying in the same way that Facebook had to shut down to bring in something called Meta, they're saying that they would have to do that with the internet in order to bring in 3.0, which would be basically the new era of kind of the finance, bringing into crypto and all that, and everybody would then be on 3.0, and they might use this kind of bug to say, well, we need to switch to this in order to stop this from happening, and that would be the new kind of financial system under 3.0.
Well, it'll be like everything else. We'll never know. Or
we'll never know.
We might know in like, you know,
but it makes sense.
Years.
And that's yeah. So
because if they just turned around and said what you said, oh, we need to switch off the internet for a few hours, few days, it's going to be uproar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've got to put some sort of plan in place to say, well, this is,
planned
it was a bug, you know, we had to do it, but really they just want to switch to the next.
But either way, whether it's genuine or not, if it happens, the implications are still going to be the same, aren't they?
Yeah. So lads, we need freezers, we need food.
Well, where are we meeting, boys?
Weaponry.
We probably shouldn't say, should we? But we've got a few plans in place, haven't we?
A few plans in place. But you know, is it crazy to maybe just get some non-perishable food? Is it crazy to maybe get yourself some torches, extra blankets, maybe a small generator? Is it crazy to put a nuclear bunker under your garden with a TV room and a sauna?
Just one.
To be fair, if we're talking 2 weeks of no food or no food supply would be the main thing for me that I want to make sure. Food and water, yeah. If we're talking 2 weeks without food, all you need is about 12 packs of 1 kg rice.
Yeah.
Really, you could feed your family on probably 1 kilogram of rice a day, couldn't you? Big.
But then you need gas as well, wouldn't you?
True, yeah. Or create a fire somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you'd have to create like a fire or something.
You need water as well, yeah.
But I think there's a lot of things that need to be thought about in this doomsday prepping thing. Yeah. Because there's going to be so many things that you'll take for granted and you won't realise until the shit hits the fan.
It'd be interesting to see any of our listeners. Do you think we're all crazy, or are you actually going to be start prepping as well? So if you want to comment and let us know your thoughts.
And if you have already prepped, and you've got some tips for us.
We've got some people watching go, finally, people who agree.
Because we do
said
know
I was
some people,
crazy.
We do know some people though who like we've got a friend, and he's been talking about this for a while. Fully prepped.
He's really into it.
Really into it. So
I feel like this conversation 3 years ago, the majority of people would have said, "Be quiet, you're a nutter. Why are we having this conversation?" Whereas now, I feel like the majority of people, they might not say it out loud, but there's something in their mind that they would agree with it. Yeah. Definitely.
I disagree. I think the majority of people still think we're probably nutcases, but there's a lot more people like us. There's more people like us now. Definitely more. And I think it's more of a younger thing as well. Like, I think if I had this conversation with a lot of people over the age of 50, 60, they'd probably be like, what are you talking about? But I don't know. I almost feel like this. It's more of a. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Actually. Yeah. Is it a young thing to be a little bit more aware?
I'm not sure, but I'm going to go on eBay and have a look if there's any tanks for sale.
I think it's like everything. It kind of goes in circles. So, like our granddad, let's say, and probably your granddad and whatever. Yeah, my pink socks.
Just clock that. Check that bad boys out, guys.
But coming from like the wartime, who experienced the Blitz and experienced like all that sort of stuff, they probably wouldn't think what we're saying now is crazy. You've got the generation in between who have had a little bit of comfort and they've been reassured by the government and everything that we're back to normal and whatever. But then you've got this new generation now, probably like sort of from mid-30s downwards, who are now starting to question things.
Definitely.
So there will be like the people in between who would probably think we were crazy, but anybody who's come from the wartime would probably think that what we're saying now is just common sense, really. So.
And what do we think about aliens visiting the planet? Is that going to happen soon? I feel like that's going to happen soon. I feel like that's going to happen quite soon.
What a trajectory.
COVID, food shortages, aliens take over the world.
I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot more kind of, because I always feel like they start planting little seeds, and I feel like there's a few seeds being planted about aliens visiting the planet and or some sort of.
Well, I think
I feel like it's going to happen soon, and why not? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're entering a time of like we're trying to travel to space ourselves, and that's like a big thing at the moment, is it? Like SpaceX and all that. So if we're trying to travel to space, there's people that are literally light years ahead of us on different planets.
Do you think that they've already come and visited us?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, because apparently we're likened, in terms of the size of the universe, we're likened to like a speck of sand on a beach.
Oh yeah.
And to think that there's not, well, that's
I was going to say smaller.
Smaller, yeah. And to think that there's not a planet out there that is more advanced than us, that have mastered time travel. As soon as we're trying to do it now, bearing in mind what 150 years ago we couldn't even. We didn't even have an aeroplane, or what they were just being built or whatever, and and now in 150 years we've come to the state we're at where we're trying to actually colonise Mars. You imagine where we're going to be in 100, 200, 300, 1,000 years from now, and there's planets out there that have, you know, could well have been around a lot longer than what we've been around for.
Yeah. There's just a lot more evolved than us.
That's it. So I mean, well, I think there's aliens. They could be circling us, and
you know what's interesting? Talking about aliens, I heard something the other day, right? And you know, a lot of the time when aliens are drawn, right, or they like obviously when they're showing like movies, etc., they've normally got big heads,
big heads,
small bodies, quite skinny frame.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I listened to this. They were talking about how us as human beings, right, obviously over time, our structures, as in our physical frames, have got a lot smaller. So going back to like caveman era, we were a lot bigger because we had to have more physical attributes, right?
Yeah.
So we had to think more physically. Do you know what I mean? Than mentally. Whereas obviously over time now, it's not about our physical presence, it's more about our mental presence. So our heads are getting bigger, our brains are getting bigger, and you know, unless you actively make an effort to work out, you know, do weights, etc., then you're going to have quite a skinny frame. So the reason I'm saying that is because what they're saying is that obviously that's where we were, this is where we are now. Fast forward another 10,000 years, are we actually going to be like these aliens depicted in like cartoons and movies, etc., with these massive heads because they've got these huge brains and actually they only need these little small frail bodies?
I think everyone's going to go plant-based. I think everyone's going to start fasting.
Segway.
I think everyone's going to just
Got to get it in, hasn't it?
Everyone's going to just, you know, become really quite thin and put on a lot of brain capacity.
Do you think that? I mean, the way obesity is out of control, the way people are eating at the moment.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I'm talking 10,000 years from now.
Okay, maybe. I mean, 10,000 years, it'll be, if we're still here, if the planet's still around, it'll be, by then it'll probably be survival of the fittest.
10,000 years from now, we might be living on Mars, or well, not us, but...
Well, I was reading today about black holes and how black holes are ever expanding as the universe expands. So
right.
I reckon in 10,000 years...
There's a lot of talk about black holes being portals, isn't there?
Wormholes.
To other dimensions.
Yeah. Well, Albert Einstein came up with that theory, didn't he? But even if it was a portal, we won't be able to survive going through the black hole. We'd be, I think they call it spaghettification. I think they call it, but we'd literally be just mangled apart by the time before.
And what? And so when you say black holes, or what? They're coming closer to our planet, are they?
Well, they're getting bigger and bigger as the universe expands, because the universe is ever expanding, and as the universe ever expands, the black holes are growing with it.
Right.
So it might get to the point where a black hole gets so big that it just, you know, swallows everything that's in its vicinity, because that's what it does with stars at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, I mean, the amount of asteroids and meteors that are just missing the planet.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's near misses all the time. We don't hear about it.
We don't hear about it, right?
But when we talk about near misses, we're talking like it missed us by 300,000 miles. That's like a near miss.
Well,
I'm pretty sure that's how they kind of say what a near miss is in comparison to the size of the planet. But the size of the universe, they say a near miss is like it was like within 100,000 miles.
Okay, but still.
But
you know, I mean, so there's that. And then, you know, if you believe in the climate change and the global warming and all that, and there's that could potentially kill us off. And then there's the shifting of the poles as well.
Yeah.
Where every so many thousand years, the poles, basically the magnetic field of the North and the South Pole, they shift, and it has catastrophic effects on the planet.
That's just bad, isn't it?
You know, hot countries become cold and. Right. You know, and all that sort of stuff, and it's all